In this lesson, we're going to take a look at how to add and subtract radical expressions. So we end up with a binomial radical expressions. Binomial meaning two terms that both have radicals in them. So go ahead and pause the video and take your notes. All right, so according to the addition and subtraction rule of radicals, your radicals must be like radicals in order to add and subtract them. And what that means is that the index and what's under the radical has to be exactly the same. So whether this is a variable or multiple variables or number, whatever expression is under the radical must be the same. So you need to look at the index, the indices are the same, and what's under the radical has to be exactly the same. If it is the same, you can add the two numbers that are in front, the A and the B. Same with subtraction. The index and what's under your radical must be exactly the same for them to be like radicals. Once you've recognized that they are like radicals, then you can add or subtract the numbers in front. So let's take a look at 5 examples here. So the first thing we see is that we have two radical expressions and we're trying to add them. We take a look at our index. Our index, they're both 2's on top because if they're missing, it's assumed to be a 2. So our indices are the same, but what's under the radical is not the same. These are not like radicals. We cannot add them. This is as simple as this expression gets, and the answer remains the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. So example 2, they're both square roots. And we notice that the number underneath our square root, it's exactly the same. So we have the square root of 2 and the square root of 2. They are like radicals. So we can add the numbers in front. We know that when the number is missing in front, that it's a 1. So when we add these two, we add the numbers in front, and 1 and 2 is 3. We get 3 square root of 2 is our answer. So for our next example, we are looking at square roots again. So that's a square root and this is a square root. So our indices are the same. And let's take a look at what's under our radical. 5x and 5x. What's under our radical is the same. So we are going to, this is a subtraction, we are going to subtract the numbers in front of our radicals. So 3 minus 2 is 1 square root of 5x. And we don't really need the 1 in front, so we could just write it as the square root of 5x. In our next example, let's take a look at what we're adding here. The first thing we look at is our radical. We're taking square roots, so our indices are the same, but what's under our square root is not the same. So not only are our radicals not like radicals, but let's take a look at our variables on the outside. The variable here is an x squared, and this variable here is an x. They're also not like terms because our variables don't match up. So we can't do anything else to this expression. So our last example, let's take a look at the radical first. The index of our radical is a square root. So it's 2, and our index here, since it's a square root, it's 2. What's under the radical is exactly the same, so our radicals are like radicals. Let's take a look at our variables on the outside. We have an x and we have an x, so our variables on the outside are exactly the same. So now we can add our numbers. 3 plus 4 is 7. We have 7x radical x y.